Gukesh Ding, round 9. No engines were harmed in this analysis. We begin with d4. And let's just say this is a little bit of an interesting drama. I feel it's a little psychological. We have the French played by Ding. There's a variety of ways to meet the French. So Gukesh could hit and run this in a variety of ways against that opening. Instead, we're seeing him poke around other openings. I think he needs to go back and take up this French challenge. Okay, knight f6. And now he plays Ding's own opening against him, the Catalan. This is the opening I think Ding should even return to. This is where Ding was amazing for years and years. Peak Ding. Peak Ding, by the way, I think maybe at this point would already be beating Gukesh. Bishop b4. Peak Ding was not afraid. Bishop d2. There's a variety of ways. I play this myself as black, very solid. And the question now is the bishop on d2 a little bit misplaced? It's going to be the question for a while now. Castles, very standard. The question c6, we're closed Catalan, we're saying the bishop on g2 is funky, the bishop on d2 is funky. g2 because he's hitting a rock. Okay, boom, 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 all very standard so far. Now bishop f4 is the normal move. And Gukesh plays bishop c3, and it's a little weird. Obviously, he wants to put the knight to d2. So this is another example of just this pattern we see where Gukesh is coming up with a new move. Might not necessarily be the best move, right? That's not the point. The point is just to create a new kind of challenge for black, and Ding thanks forever. Now, the other pattern we're seeing is that Ding, fairly early in the game, is losing immense amounts of time and has yet to really be properly punished for that. Okay, bishop c3. Controversial because it's not clear the bishop wants to be there. And furthermore, black has a very simple plan of just going here, here, and saying, queen, you're misplaced. Okay? Ding thanks forever here. Dude, you should just play bishop b7 right away. Come on. Come on. Knight d2. Queen c7, I'm certain rook c8 was fully fine. Rook a c1, rook f, b4, kind of a frisky move. That was Gukesh's first think. And then the claim here, it's not really clear if it's that true, is that c5 is a threat. Okay, so Ding tanks again. This is his second big thing, and plays c5. Okay, boom, boom. And this is, I feel, a critical moment for the game. And while we were looking at it as chump IMs and GMs, we felt the candidate moves were CD5 or DC5. We really couldn't find any other moves that made sense to us. And we didn't even think of the move Gukesh played, queen b2. And now another massive think from Ding. Let me show you the time graph here. Boom. So in this time graph, what you can see is that he's going, he just takes forever. He takes forever. And eventually you're going to get hurt. Eventually you're going to get hurt. The reason he hasn't gotten hurt so far is at some point in the 20s or the 30s, a sequence of moves happens that are kind of forcing and that get us so much closer to move 40. Okay? So, boom, let's go back. Queen b2. Now, the big question really is, well, what about the natural rook b8? And this was a big question for us. We came to the conclusion that maybe, because at first we were looking at queen a1, but we couldn't make queen a1 work after cd4. We just didn't understand what black had here, or white had. But then we came to think maybe Ding was afraid of queen a3, and, for example, pop, 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 and maybe knight g5. Interesting. This still feels pretty unclear for everyone involved, but this, we think, is what led Ding to play knight b6. And after knight b6, at least for me, I popped my eval up to a little bit. I was like, okay, okay, White's done something good for himself. Then another, this is very curious, bishop a5, the most natural move in the world. So when we think about the position earlier, we say, White really had a problem piece on c3. Now it has a job to do. Okay, so here I was confounded here. I was confounded because DC happens. And the first question is, well, what about knight c4, knight c4? And then so I was thinking, oh, that's Ding's idea. That's why he thought forever on dc4. Because by the way, when you play knight b6, bishop a5, that's the only move. That's the only move for you to consider. And then he thinks another 15 minutes on dc4. I thought rook c4 was going to be played. I thought that was very clever with the point that I maintain the tension, and if you take, I get this business, and we can claim we got a little something. So I didn't understand any of this. Instead, we saw knight c4. And the intention apparently is if knight c4, rook c4, oh, let's put it on the board. Queen a5, queen b7, now we're going to claim we have a little something with this being touched and no rook d7 because of queen a8. Possible, okay. So interesting idea. I didn't see it coming. Knight c4. It does allow this though, bishop f3. And what's the point? We simply want to get out of the way of the take on b7. And this forces snip and snap. Now, at this point, I was saying to myself, maybe we do got a little something because the rook has some questions. We can rule out knight d5, I think, because of snip, snop, and queen b6 looks good for White. So it's either going to be the passive rook b8 or the more active rook a6. On rook b8, the real drama is how do you feel about knight e5? And you know, maybe you can play that way, but it's going to be a little scary. And this knight c6 idea is going to be critical all the time. All right, rook a6. Now, one thing that I think makes sense to me is if you're going to tank, it should be in moments where there's calculation is at stake. And so knight e5 is a thought and queen b5 is a thought. We couldn't make knight e5 work. So we played queen b5, that was our guess, and now it gets hot. Rook a2, knight b6. First glance here suggested that we were doing great because it looks like that c-pawn's pinned. The bummer, however, is that we're not actually threatening to take the pawn. Once this pawn goes, then rook d1, and then this falls. So we were looking at all kinds of moves like g6, and we came up with strange ways of maybe punishing g6. So that was interesting. Ding quickly, though, plays queen a7. Now, the whole thing about Ding and chill, this Ding defense, is when it comes to these positions where he's in some time pressure, you know, he plays like very accurately and quickly. So don't try this at home, what he's doing with taking so long on the moves. So we didn't know what to do here. This was a difficult moment, and I correctly guessed queen b1. This creates at least some tricks. Now, we have the cheapo merchant idea is that here we're going to make the queen take the bishop, and then we take your rook. And we're also just kind of saying, hey, buddy, your rook on a2 is offsides. It might be on the 7th rank, and that might look cool, but ultimately it's offsides. Ding finds a nice forcing level of play, and now we had to admit at the dojo, it's all the way down to 0 now, all the way down. And the point is pretty basic, is that black opposite color bishops has the dark squares, white has the light squares, and this whole construction that white has is on the dark squares. So we are going to be able to play bishop c5 and take the knight, and the bishop on f3, unfortunately, can't participate in the attack. Now, one thing that's interesting is I think for most GMs, they would find a way to agree to a draw here pretty quickly. That is not the way of the Gukesh. Okay, like I said in the last video, the guy is creating a new way of playing. And if he had a way to continue playing, even if he was slightly worse, I think he would, right? So the game is, in some ways, for us old-timer GMs, this is over. But this game keeps going. Like here, you know, anyways, they keep going. They keep going and going and going and going and going. They're going to play all the way, my friends. And they are still thinking on a lot of these moves. You know, they're still thinking on some of these moves. Yeah, this is a total draw, but these guys are they're going to play it all the way, buddy. Okay, so there it is, round 9. I think this is a good result for Ding. The last 2 rounds, he really had to struggle, and he survived. This one, I feel he draws fairly comfortably, even though he gets in time pressure in his usual way. Now he gets a rest day. And I think the longer it goes on, the more chance we get of Ding refinding old Ding. He's buried somewhere in there. The Ding who plays with confidence. The Ding who is forced to defend, that Ding has fight or flight instincts that protect him, right? But at some point, like when he had the great position out of the London game, he's going to have a nice position, and the old Ding has to resurface. And it's like every game, Gukesh is the one pressing and pressing. At some point, the old Ding needs to come back. And as I said, the more the match goes on, the more the chance that we're going to see peak Ding return. Till round 10, Saturday morning.